St. Paul, Minnesota, and this is Chad Johnson, and he is the IT director at William Mitchell College of Law. And we are going to talk today about the hybrid in-person/online JD program that William Mitchell is going to start in January 2015. This is our agenda. It's pretty brief. We hoped that this is going to be more like a conversation, so please feel free to ask questions. We'll leave time at the end, but please feel free to ask questions anytime you are so moved. William Mitchell College of Law was started in 1900. I'm just going to give you a really brief background of the school, brief history. It was started in 1900, and it was started as a night law school. And this was a time when night law schools were sort of looked down upon by the rest of the establishment, sort of thought that if you couldn't put in the time to drop everything, not have a job, and go during the day, maybe you weren't really serious and shouldn't be going to law school. It was ABA approved in 1938, and we added daytime classes in 1975. Some of its more famous graduates include Chief Justice Warren Burger. Our library is actually named after him. We also claim 14 justices from the Minnesota Supreme Court, and we currently have a plurality of currently sitting trial court and court of appeal judges in Minnesota. Like I said, presently we have a daytime and nighttime program, but there are still some in our faculty and administration who really do feel that the heart and soul of the school is with nighttime programs, and a goal is offering access to students who don't necessarily have access.
How large is the night program?
It's much smaller, actually.
Currently, yeah, it was larger.
It used to be. It gradually shifted. It was mostly, obviously, it was all night at one time, and then it's kind of like this. But I can't. Do you remember the numbers?
Not right off, no.
So it's a smaller portion, like probably smaller than a quarter right now.
But a lot of also the other flip side, a lot of our full-time students though do transition a lot of times from the day into night classes later on. So.
So about 4 years ago, college faculty and administration started to explore how the law school might take advantage of some of the increasing e-learning pedagogical tools to further the mission of access to those who might not be able to stop everything and move to somewhere, to a place, and take daytime classes full time. But they realized that a truly innovative program would require some variance on the distance education rules set forth by the ABA, accreditation standards. Most of you guys probably are aware of these, but basically, if more than a third of a course that you're taking is online, that means it's a distance learning course according to the ABA, and you can't take more than 12 credits of distance learning in an ABA accredited program. And during the first year, you can't have any distance learning credits at all. So that's the current landscape as it is. And Simon Kanik, our library director and IT director, we're actually a combined information resources department, was heavily involved, I think from the moment he started working, in trying to figure out this conundrum of distance education and how to promote it to make it more accessible to students and yet still be ABA accredited. But the rest of us in IR were only sort of tangentially aware of it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. He wanted to be here to talk about it. He didn't, so we have him in video form coming up.
Yes. If Simon cannot come to the mountain will come to Simon.
We said we were going to actually have a standee at one point and just kind of refer to him.
So I started getting involved to get an ABA waiver process early last spring and last summer, late last spring, early last summer. And the rest of the library and Chad also started to be involved around that time. I was involved in several curriculum team meetings. Faculty were sort of hand-picked as to faculty who would be more open to these kinds of ideas, faculty who are already engaging in using these sort of tools for some sort of, under that 1/3 threshold for distance learning. Simon and I actually interviewed all of our professors who were using these sorts of tools and doing more, had multiple assessments in their class and were doing some sort of backwards design and things like that. So these were the faculty that were involved in the curriculum team discussions where we mapped out what this kind of program might look like. And then there were other committees meeting about the technology side and how to actually approach the ABA with this proposal. We mocked up courses, the whole shebang. And did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean.
Okay. And last summer, mid-July, with the approval of the faculty and the Board of Trustees, the college submitted a request to the ABA section on legal education and admission to the bar for the variance for those rules that I just had listed on the last screen. The whole thing was roughly a 50-page document with 10 exhibits, and in total it was 700 pages. So it was huge. It wasn't just... It was an outline of what we wanted to do. It was some mocked up course plans. It was a detailed history of the school. It was a big, thick document. And the variance was approved in December of 2013. These are the basic requirements that we promised to meet and the accommodations that we received. Up to half of a course may occur online, and it won't be considered distance learning, as opposed to what we just saw on the last slide. And online education can occur during the first year. In return, we promised that we would only enter one class a year. We were limited to 96 students for the first class. And we have to provide an experience as close to what our bricks and mortar students will get as possible. So law review, moot courts, clinics, student support, the whole shebang.
Student organizations and such, right, as well too.
And it's not a separate but equal kind of thing. We have to integrate it and be as close to it as we can. We also had to promise to tell people about it. So that's one of the reasons we're here today. We're not keeping it under wraps. We are informing others that it's doable, that the ABA is open to these sorts of things. So, that said, you might be wanting to know a little bit more about the program. And the idea, again, is that an online program a hybrid program will make the education more accessible to people who might not want to move to St. Paul. Family members who live in more rural areas. What else? What other? People who don't want to quit their jobs, or can't quit their jobs. Our dean refers to this option as a night law school for the 21st century. And so we really see it as a continuation of our access mission that we've been doing for over 100 years.
And I mean, oftentimes as we go to talk about it, and especially like other conferences that I've been to with the tech stuff, a lot of things that are referred to it is they see it as very much just an online program, but it isn't really a true online program. 50% of it is online, but a lot of the focus of the curriculum is going to be focused on that. There's week-long capstones. Where the students will come in for an intensive 7 days and go through these simulations that a lot of the simulation time and the exposure that they're going to receive is they believe will be almost more than what some of the traditional bricks and mortar would have experienced throughout the semester. But they'll have it in more of an intensive track that simulates what they would be practicing in law too. So.
The very first term, they'll come onto campus for a week and have an intensive preparatory week, and it literally will be 8 hours a day. And I think it's a 7-day week, a real week. And then they do 12 weeks online, and then they come back for the capstone week, which again is another intensive simulation week where they'll be, some of them might be in a trial, or some of them might be undergoing a negotiation, things like that. We have a lot of professors who do intensive 1 week courses, 1 week, 8-hour-a-day courses. Negotiation and settlements is one of them. And so they have experience running through this gauntlet essentially with students. And I have to say the students really, really like it. Can you play the video? And this is a video of Simon and our Dean Janis, and he's gonna talk just a little bit about it.
I mean, in a way, you can see this as a grand flipped classroom, that we have 12 weeks of highly interactive, structured, accountable learning that culminates in everybody coming to the building. But why do they come to the building? They come to the building exactly for that face-to-face, integrative, intense experience that characterizes law practice. So this capstone experience is going to be 56 hours in 7 days, 7 8-hour days. Some people have said, really? You're going to have students work 7 8-hour days in a row? And the response is, well, did you ever practice law? What do you think lawyers do? And what do you think lawyers' life is like? And how much do you learn, those of you who've practiced? How much did you learn in your first 6 months of practice about what it meant to be a lawyer? So what we really decided we could do is bring that kind of intense, integrative, hands-on, experiential instruction into the first year of law school and throughout law school.
So we actually think that the technology and the online aspect of it is kind of a red herring. That's sort of what gets people interested. But what we really think is the core of it, and the really sort of radical part, is these intense weeks, and the fact that the cohort, this is a part-time program, so they'll be taking 3 classes at once in a term, and the classes will be integrated. The contracts professor is meeting with the torts professor, and they're going to work to make their the curriculum work together and speak to each other, and same with the legal writing class. So the students and the professors will know what's going on throughout the whole term. And these students will be, with the exception of, I can't remember how many, there's limited, what's the word I'm looking for? Limited, I'm just going blank. It's a prescribed program. There's very few extracurriculars that they'll be taking. So there'll be a real cohort for the full 3 or 4 years that they're in it. Now the last year, there are some externships and some, and the chance for a few classes that they can choose to take. But for the most part, it's pretty prescribed and pretty intense, and the classes will all speak to each other and work together. So, did you have anything else to add to that?
Very good.
So we had to overcome some issues among our own community at the school, and among our wider community of practitioners and people in the area, and of course in the world in general, right? So there's one of the issues we run into is that there are anti-distance learning biases.
Like the standard.
So do you want to play the...
Sure.
And Dean Janis is going to outline them briefly.
There are some thoughtful reactions from people who say, well, gee, I don't know, this is new, I want to learn more about it. Another group of people are very enthusiastic. They understand that technology has got to be part of the future, and they're excited about that. And then there's a fairly substantial group that thinks it's horrible, that it's the end of civilization as we know it. And so that group says things like, well, this is like law school in your PJs, right? And so I mean, one of the things I think about is, you know, we actually have distance education already. They're called casebooks. They use technology, the printing press, to allow people to learn law in their PJs at home if they want. They weigh 30 pounds. They can't be changed, you know, they are fixed. So they're very, very old technology, but that's distance education.
So we have had a number of town hall meetings open to alumni and other local people and students, because some students have expressed concerns. And I don't want to say that we've brought everybody along to see the light, but we're not obviously requiring anybody to take this. This isn't taking the place of our nighttime or daytime program. And I think, like Dean Janice said, some people who are more open to hearing about it have sort of been turned around.
Yeah, and even with a lot of the literature that's been out with marketing to students, it's being promoted just as another way to receive the education that we talk about in our regular full-time, part-time programs, and then the hybrid option, and then trying to explain to them what that means. Again, because we're using the term as a hybrid option, but that can be defined in any number of different ways. And so it's critical for us to get the word out as to what that really means to those students that are going to apply to the program. And then as far as even the biases, I mean, I wasn't a part of the initial, but I mean, I know that from all the conversations that I've had with everybody else, it was definitely something important that they have taken into account as they've decided to create this program and expand this, is that there are going to be the people that are going to question whether or not they're going to be able to receive the education that they need. And also with these students, it's almost going to be more important to get really, really good students in and have them educated in a way that when they leave, they almost have to be more prepared than the traditional bricks and mortar do, only just to prove the fact that this can work as compared to the others. So.
When you were talking about marketing, I was flashing back to some funny conversations that we had with marketing over what to call it. Yeah. Hybrid or blended. They had some really wacky, I can't even remember now, but there were some really sort of involved conversations of, well, how do we put this out there? What does hybrid mean? What does blend? It means different things to different people. What are we really doing? Yes?
Are you ready for some questions, or do you want to keep looking first?
You can ask questions whenever you want.
Well, since you just said a moment or two ago that you're still maintaining your regular, all full residential, full-time and nighttime program.
Yes, we are. I'm going to repeat because they asked us to repeat it. We are keeping our regular daytime and part-time programs.
That prompts me to ask two questions.
Yes.
Is there any concern that in this day of everyone struggling to get students to apply to law school, if you are a law school, and when I say everyone, I mean the vast majority of law schools, do you have any concerns that the hybrid program might cannibalize people who would otherwise be applying to the other two programs in terms of numbers of students? And secondly, well, you can answer that first.
Okay.
Before I ask my second question.
I know there are people concerned that the hybrid option will cannibalize people from the other options, and I don't know that we have a party line on that, but it probably will. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the only answer that I have to that.
I'm guessing, if I were in your dean's shoes, his balancing exercises, yeah, it might, but we'll make up for it by the people who wouldn't come at all, starting to come to this high school.
And at the core, what we're looking to do, just like, you know, with any of this, is to get students in and educate them. And if it's their preference to do one or the other, then, you know, all the much better.
The other question is a resource question. Given that you're maintaining what you already do, are you able to add bodies to create this program, or are you reallocating time of existing faculty and staff?
A little from column A and a little from column B. The question was, given resources and declining resources, are we going to be able to keep up all of what we are saying we're going to keep up? We have added a couple bodies. We've hired an instructional designer who has been a tremendous asset to the faculty. And I thought we were hiring.
We have and will be increasing hours in IT and in the information resources.
The faculty who are working in this
Oh, the
program,
faculty.
Are they taking away time from, so are they being relieved of teaching traditional courses in exchange?
I don't know the answer. I don't know if the faculty are, the faculty who are teaching online next year are not teaching in person next year.
Right, that's the question.
But I don't know enough about their regular workloads to be able to, yes.
So I'm assuming the faculty volunteered to do this.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes. That actually segues us very nicely into our, or did you have a follow-up question?
No, I was just sort of curious.
Will do.
Who volunteered? Did you see a generational shift?
No.
Tenure versus non-tenure shift?
No.
Who volunteered?
It was across the board.
It was, yeah. We have a faculty member who is of a certain age, who is very heavily involved and has been doing, not for lawyers, but he leads other programs for legal related topics for NEDA that he does entirely online. And actually he teaches one of the advocacy classes, and they do a lot with online, sending videos to each other and critiquing them and things like that. But then we have some younger faculty as well. So it is really across the board.
Yeah, some like full-time adjuncts and such too, all the way to tenure and age. Every kind of age all the way along. But that's also within the faculty, and that's what we see in IT a lot. They often say that, or talk about the younger faculty. They're the ones that are just embracing technology. But in my experience, I've had 70-plus-year-old faculty members that were doing more with it than I see some of the 20-year-olds come out with. It really just kind of depends on what their wants and needs are, and what they're trying to do with the class, and how much they want to put into it. So, yeah.
I would say that it was faculty members who strongly believe in the concepts of backwards design and providing a lot of assessments, providing rubrics for homework, issues like that, who volunteered for it. Whether or not they use a lot of technology in their classrooms now, currently, or not.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
No, I'm just.
I was just wondering about the facilities that are provided to the faculty for creating their videos. Is there a studio in the law school? Do they do it in their offices? How does that work?
We do have a studio, and some of them I'm sure will be creating videos in there. People who will be doing more screencasting will probably do that in their offices, but we can assist them in the library too if they would like. Currently, that probably wouldn't be the case for the hybrid program, but currently we have faculty who in their homes are creating videos for their classes. So I think it runs the gamut. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to, I'm Steve Burnett with Catholic Legal Education, and we were heavily involved early on in discussions with Mitchell about this. And I just wanted to say that I don't think you want to gloss over how much and how important faculty cooperation is to this project. It's I've been a lot of faculties around the country. There are very, very few faculties who would come together in a collaborative way to put together something like this. It's just like herding cats is the classic expression for it. But the Mitchell faculty is ready for a centralized curriculum, which is a really difficult concept for most law school faculties, and ready to embrace this and see what happens, and ready to try to create a new model for legal education, which I admire greatly. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
And that's when I said this several times, it starts to sound like I'm preaching, but when I looked at Mitchell for a job myself, and was trying to find some place for me to be, Mitchell was one of the schools that was at the top of my list to apply for. And it was because of the stuff that the faculty do, and also that they, within this mission to provide legal education to everyone that's out there, this is something that was a core principle with myself, that I am now, I'll be there 2 years as of October, and I applied for the job. I believed that that's what it was, but oftentimes you get those you start working there, and then maybe it's not that everybody's all part of that mission, but I've found that that is the case, and that's what makes it really, really good is the cooperation in the work and the commitment that the faculty have as well as the staff that are on site. So
that leads us into this, which we sort of talked a little bit about, but I have to show this video because it. No, that's no. That's we're back. We jumped forward.
No.
We're back on steering a big ship.
This one?
Oh yeah, that one.
Luckily, our faculty embraced it totally right from the beginning.
100%. That's why it took us 4 years.
No, you missed the punchline. He said that's why it took us 4 years. So, despite what we just said, there are some faculty who remain opposed to it for reasons that we discussed, the anti-distance learning biases, for reasons that they don't want to give up their own control of their own classes, and we are asking faculty to work together, not just on these 2 classes, but on the whole idea of you have to create objectives, and these objectives have to be shown to the students. The students have to be able to see a rubric for the assessments before they start working on them. So issues of instructional design like that we have to. Some faculty aren't crazy about those ideas. So we have, but we're not, again, just like we're not forcing students to take this program, no professors are teaching in it who don't want to teach in it. That obviously wouldn't go well for anybody. So we're just gonna. Yeah,
and it's a fine line between the academic freedom. That's the term that usually that comes up, and it's the that we need the program to, a lot of the classes, they function where even within one program as it's going, the instructors between contracts and that
it's going to be contracts and property together.
Yeah, and that the instructors have to be able to talk to one another, and in a bricks and mortar, that's a little easier to do in that, but in this, we're... I don't know.
You might think it is, but they don't.
If they've done it for years, But no, but it does take on it. You have to think about it in a different way, and then we're also trying to provide, within IT as we go to try to help and assist with this too. I mean, some of what we're trying to do is the do more with less, and how do we do that as well? And so some of that comes down to that. We're trying to get some standardization into it, like how that you would build the courses, but then also some of the tools that we're going to help provide, because IT and IR, we're going to have to support this, and we're going to have to support the students, we're going to have to support the faculty, and then and make sure that these are things that are of use to the students and faculty, that the learning curve is not quite as high, and that they're able to focus more on the education and not so much just on the tools that are there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes.
Is tuition the same for this program?
It is. At least right now. Yep. And so there's also issues which we briefly touched on with instructional design. And as I said, many of our faculty have already embraced these concepts. But even if they embrace them, they don't necessarily know how to work them. So that has been an issue for us. We've had questions of, how much synchronous versus asynchronous. The synchronous part sort of appeals to some people because it's as much like the bricks and mortar that they're already used to. However, number one, that decreases accessibility, right? If you're in China or something, you're not going to be able to wake up or you're not going to want to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch an hour-long lecture. And number two, hour-long lectures probably aren't really very effective in this manner. So there's the asynchronous and synchronous thing has been we've been struggling with that a lot, and we're trying to come up with the best mix of that we can. The idea of multiple assessments is really foreign to most law professors, and so how and when do you give them, what kinds are best to give them, the feedback that has to go with assessments to make it of use to the students. Those kind of issues are not normal for most law professors, and so bringing them up to speed on these things has been one of our opportunities, and that was one of the big reasons we hired an instructional designer on board who has really been working individually with each faculty who's teaching, and also we meet as a group, the faculty involved. Again, we're still continuing our curriculum team meetings from last spring to talk about the integration piece. Then what are you doing that maybe I should echo over here? And over this week, there's a lot going on in contracts, so maybe let's make property a little bit less heavy that week. Things like that. Okay, let's play the video.
Do you all require the students in this program to buy any particular technology, or do you just sort of give them baseline
I think that's a
specs
question
that
for you.
they then need to try and meet?
There's going to be a minimum requirements for them, which we're going to put up, and then the hope is that we're going to provide them with some easy links to, they're going to need a computing device, preferably a laptop, and then also some of the like Office Pack and different things like that. Some of which we already offer our students at free or discounted prices. And then even as far as the computing goes, we're in IT, we're negotiating with some of the vendors to get some websites set up so that they'd have easy place to go to and find machines that are recommended by us. But we're still leaving them up to the fact that here's the minimum requirements, you can get it wherever you want, but here's some good pricing. And that we're trying to also get warranties to align so that when these part-time students are there, hopefully if they purchase one of these, they're going to be in the program for 4 years, they get a 4-year warranty, and they don't have to worry about the computer while they're in it. And then we are trying to vamp up some of our loaner programs and different things like that. And we're looking into what it would mean to somebody goes down and they send their computer in to be able to get them a computing device in the meanwhile, and even just shipping or downloading Office disks to them. And we're trying to make it as seamless as possible between the two.
We talked about for a while trying to use Google Docs or something open source or things like that, but part of what we want to do with the technology is get them to use things that lawyers actually use. So there is a bit of a balancing act with that too, that we need to, that part of why we're talking about technology in the way we are is that lawyers are increasingly have to learn technology, and law students should be taught how to, format Word documents to include a table of contents, the whole issues like that.
And that falls back into the practical wisdom of Mitchell and trying to train them in ways that they'll use when they leave school as well. We are a Microsoft Office college, so we have our Office 365, we have our Office web apps, and then that provides us the licensing for that, and we'll have means for them to have their OneDrive space, which used to be the SkyDrive, but it's now called OneDrive. And then we're going to have some other stuff for them too, and we've been working with the clinics to move them into using software like Go Clio for them to get a sense of what it is to use the attorney software and to have that kind of terminology that's in the software, and then we'll be able to extend that to the students that are in the hybrid program as well. So,
We have one more video to play, and it's short.
You can do crummy education in a building or online. You don't need to go to the expense of having an online program to do schlock. I mean, if we wanted to do schlock, we could do it in the building. It would be a lot cheaper.
So, and then a final part of this crisis/opportunity is the idea of creating a sense of community. It's very important to us. One of the things that our bricks and mortar students comment on the most is the sense of being a William Mitchell student and part of the William Mitchell community. And we really want to replicate that. We have to replicate that with our hybrid students. And so trying to think really outside of the box in terms of law reviews and MOOC. And you would think that law reviews, right, they don't need to meet in person at all, but they're still compiling everything and putting it on a shelf in the library. We just took a tour of the Harvard library, and they're still putting everything on the shelves and compiling it in the library. So, meeting with this year's editor-in-chief, who's not going to be next year's editor-in-chief, and trying to iron out some of these issues has been challenging and interesting, and it's really exciting. The community piece is really the part that I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and how you simulate that, especially through like with the LMS or online through email, community modules, different things like that. I was meeting last week with the student organizations, and we were talking to them about allowing the hybrid students to sit on the committees and what that would mean. And so they're examining that. We're working through how that they could meet through web conferencing tools online, and then also to talk to them about sharing documents through like a SharePoint or through their OneDrive, so that they can share the documents, they can meet remotely, different things like that. So,
and all of that, of course, benefits our bricks and mortar students too, because that's what they're going to have to do when they're in practice, and they're having, Skype interviewing their client in Kansas City or whatever, and sharing documents with their colleagues, and so it benefits them as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of IR's, as you can imagine, one of IR's biggest roles, because currently we're our LMS support. We currently use Blackboard through LexisNexis, which is free, and we are not going to be using that for the hybrid program. We can't brand it the way that we would like.
We don't have. Oops, sorry.
No, that's all right. Students don't have to access it through Lexis, so when Lexis is down, they can't get to their learning management system.
They have no uptime guarantees, so it's there or it's not. And with hybrid program, we can't bank on the fact that it can be down for 3 days or that the logins don't work. There's no single sign-on. And we have no administrative rights, so we can't, if somebody has a problem, we have to contact somebody and then hope that they return the call, and that just doesn't work for this. So
we are similarly not using Twen either for this. But this was mostly Chad's baby.
We went through a lot. I mean, we had committee meetings, and we brought in as many stakeholders as we could to look at the different LMSs. And I mean, it all started with, what do we need? And when we looked at like what the faculty would need, really what it comes down to and not shocking, is the list that we formulated. I think one of them was like, 10, 15 pages long. Every LMS pretty much has this. We're not reinventing anything. We weren't saying, oh, this place has this and this one doesn't. It started to come down to costs and integration features, and then then we started looking at the fact that, and we had decided upon Blackboard with the fact that we have been using Blackboard through LexisNexis. Prior to LexisNexis, they had hosted their own version of Blackboard itself. Blackboard had purchased Illuminate, right? I believe is what it was, that became Collaborate, and that allows us the synchronous and asynchronous tool and recording, and it was a more integrated component. And then as we started looking at that, we had less of a learning curve, because the faculty and majority of them that had been doing stuff online had already been working with Blackboard. The bricks and mortar students, the plan with this was we were going to do a selection, and then for the standardization for the college, so that we could support that, we didn't want to support Lexis Blackboard and then our Blackboard, and then somebody has Moodle, somebody has Twen, somebody has something. We wanted something that was going to be a community module. It was going to be part of Mitchell. It was going to be the thing that everybody went to, bricks and mortar or hybrid. And the bricks and mortar students were also used to Blackboard as well. So learning curve-wise, cost-wise, feature-wise, things started just to tend towards Blackboard. But we looked at even the other options, that there's other schools within the area that we work with a lot on other projects, and we do collaboration and work on, and some of those use Moodle, so we looked at that. Canvas has a lot of great offerings, and there's schools in our area that have that as well. But as we went through it, and then as the faculty met and looked at what the options were, everything kind of tended towards and moved towards Blackboard. So that's what we've decided upon.
I can't make it work. So in all of this, hopefully you've realized that IR played a really big role. At the beginning, before we had an instructional designer, I was heavily involved working with the professors trying to work out how these classes would work. We have one librarian working on copyright issues. We have two of them working on compliance issues because there's the whole, it's not just the ABA. Each state has its own Department of Education, and there's all sorts of myriad of, if you are, what do they say? If you have a presence in that state, what is the extent of that, and does that mean you have to register with the state? There's a whole long list. And I have to say, is there anybody here from the working group on distance learning and legal education? They have been a tremendous help. Hi, Debbie. They have been a tremendous help, and I highly recommend if you're interested in any of this, because I mean they just brought up things that we didn't even know existed, and they're a really good group. I know I've seen a lot of them here, so they're a really good group of folks that have been, they're sort of rogue professors who have been doing distance learning and legal education to the extent that they can for several years. And of course, the library is going to be undertaking the research instruction for the hybrid students, and we have to figure out how that's going to work. And we have to figure out how ILL is going to work. There's a whole number of issues here where the library and IT, IR as a whole, has to work together and has to work with faculty members who aren't always necessarily used to working that closely with us on a sort of peer-to-peer level. And
I mean, it became a lot of meetings to go to, but
it's still a lot of meetings to go to.
But I mean, the great part about being at the table, though, is that then we're more invested, where we have our voice during the process, rather than just being reactive to what somebody else has decided upon for any other particular reason. And for that, I feel like we're much more prepared than we could have been. So.
Our boss always says that IR needs to be prepared to take on roles in really strategic projects, or else we sort of risk withering away. And this was a really good example of how we were involved almost from Simon was involved from day zero, and we were involved from day one, I would say.
A question?
Yes?
Is the ABA requiring any follow-up report?
Yes. Yes, they are.
Can you tell us what they're asking?
I don't know exactly what they're asking, but we are, and that's an interesting question too, because when we're working with the instructional designer, he's talking about, well, you come up with this and your objective meets your assessment here, and then you have your list of objectives, and we run out this thing at the end, and we make sure that we've touched on all of your objectives with your readings and your assessments and everything else, your lectures. Everything that you do has to go back to these objectives, and if there are objectives that aren't being met, we either have to meet them or we have to get rid of them. Are there things that are being met more often than others? So he's got this whole almost matrix. And so we're thinking, okay, and he says then at the end we'll be able to better measure if learning takes place. And so he sort of, I can't remember, he asked, so then you can compare them to your other students. And we said, in law school they don't do that. There is no measuring as to whether or not learning has been taken place. So it will be a really interesting experience on how exactly we're going to be relating this data. We'll be able to get this data, but relating it back to the ABA will be an interesting challenge, I think. I thought you might want to hear a little bit about some of these prospective students who have been applying. I think we've had about 80 applications, and we've sent out under 30 acceptances. Mm-hmm. Maybe more like 20, I can't remember. But included in our, the letters that we've sent acceptances to is a 41-year-old mother of 2 kids in South Carolina. She hopes to make changes in the healthcare industry. We have a mother of 6 who is living on a German military base, and she wants to become a JAG with the Navy. We have a father who was born in rural China, and he emigrated to the United States in 2006. He lives in Texas. He has been published in 8 journals, has a patent pending, and he already holds a PhD in electrical engineering. Did you want to take some of these?
Sure. I don't remember all the details. There was a gentleman from Bemidji, Minnesota, which is a rural rural town it's got to be 3.5 hours from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
He's grown up there his whole life. He owns his own business. His family's from there. His parents are from there. His grandparents are from there. He loves the town. One of the things that he's always wanted to do was get into like city politics and help things there. But for him to go to law school was to pick up his family or leave his family and go to the Twin Cities and try to get the law degree. And this program is going to allow him to get the law degree program so he can do stuff in the city that he loves, and then not have to necessarily leave the town and leave his family except for the week or so, like a couple weeks a year. So
we had a lot of applications from members of the military, and apparently a lot of applications from people in various roles in the healthcare industry, which we thought was interesting. They're all over the country and some overseas. They're not just in the upper Midwest, which is where I think most of our traditional students come from.
And the average age is higher.
But it's like Simon says, it's more like the makeup of our students, of our part-time students from a couple decades ago, which sort of makes sense, and it follows what Dean Janis thinks of. This is the part-time, the nighttime program for the 21st century.
Yeah.
Are there any questions that we didn't answer throughout or that came up? Or yes?
Will any of the faculty who will be teaching classes in this program be teaching in your either day or evening programs with bricks and mortar?
For sure not the first year. After that, I'm not sure what the arrangements are. And I suppose it would depend on, they do have money in their budget for some adjuncts to help with some of the online mostly grading.
What I was thinking was if you had the same professor teaching torts in both programs, if they gave the same tests, then you have a point of comparison.
Yeah, that's true.
And there has been some talk of that, to run a comparison.
Well, and they certainly although, yeah, I don't know. Some of the tests are going to have to change a lot, I think. I mean, it might be like one essay, but they're doing so many other assessments throughout that they're not necessarily doing. Although I'm thinking of our torts professor who's currently teaching torts and is going to teach torts in this program. He does multiple assessments too, so that's a good point. Yes?
The students have an option of switching out of it if they don't like it, or switching into it if
That's a very good question, and I keep forgetting to repeat the question. She asked if people would have the chance of switching back out or in. And when they're at, what did we say? Definitely, it's going to be harder for the hybrid students to leave, or the non-hybrid students to join in, because it's so prescriptive. They're all in a cohort together for most of the time. When the hybrid students are taking their electives, they would be able to take and that's going to be sometime in their second year. They would be able to take an elective on campus if they wanted to. And I think the bricks and mortar students would be able to take those elective courses, because that's not part of the whole integrated experience. Those are standalone classes. So for those classes, I think they would be able to. And if a hybrid student finished like the first year and then wanted to come to the bricks and mortar, I think that would be doable, and probably vice versa. But it's not going to be as easy as it is currently for our day and night students to switch programs. Any other questions?
Sure.
I have a silly comment to offer.
Sure.
A comeback you can take back to your dean is for the people who say aren't want this to be students learning law in their pajamas. Has that person observed what some students wear to class?
Yeah.
Or walked around and observed what people are looking at when they're on class.
Yeah, the conversation even came up as one of the constitutional law professors. He did a thing where he had students in his class submit oral arguments.
Oh, right.
And so this was all exciting. We talked to him, and we set up so some students could come in and do it in some of the recording rooms. But then he let other students do it at home and everything. And then all of a sudden we get a phone call about a week later, and he's like, I probably should have said on there that they they needed to dress in some kind of attire because he started getting like, it looked like they woke up out of bed and shot the oral argument out and then came in for class. But it wasn't very many of them. But it was just kind of funny, things you don't think about as you go along.
Well, and actually that working group for distance learning and legal education, they've had several little things where they give talks on, yeah, you really kind of do have to set the expectations for the students when they're making videos of themselves.
Yeah.
A whole list of,
Yeah. People pay attention to the background. You know, that's the other.
Don't have people walking back and forth in their robes.
Don't wear stripes in front of Venetian blinds.
Yeah.
That was one I didn't even think
Don't
of.
wear green to the green screen.
Yeah.
The ABA, as far as the waiver goes, they specify any kind of requirements as far as reporting progress?
That's what she asked, and there are reporting. I don't know what the specifics are on it.
I just tweeted a link to the ABA's, they have a summary of the grant of the variance on their website, and it does give part of the paragraph at the bottom talks about the reporting requirements.
But like I said, we really have been struggling with that because what do you compare it to when we haven't been taking those kinds of...
I guess my question is more, did they tell you or give you the guidelines on how to do that? Or did they just say, please do it?
School must file detailed annual reports on a range of matters, including applications, admissions, attrition, academic status, and progress of students in the program, student course evaluations, faculty teaching in the program, and how students in the program are provided with library. Academic support, skills training, student services, and curricular and co-curricular opportunities, and services that are comparable to such opportunities as services in the school's JD program.
So yeah, that's really they seem really most concerned about providing the same opportunities that we give to our bricks and mortar. And it's not really addressing the questions that we're really interested in.
And the grant is also conditioned on the schools waiving the right to confidentiality of accreditation-related matters under Rule 25. This is all going to be an open book as this thing goes forward.
That's why we're here.
There you go.
Yes?
I imagine academic support would be difficult. Do you have any change to your standards for entry for this particular program?
For entry, no, we don't. But the academic, it's really interesting. I went to a Sloan Consortium conference which I also encourage people to look at if they're interested in distance education, because there are colleges have been doing this, and academic support is a big part of it, and there are ways to deal with these issues, and we're confronting all of these things kind of late in the game, but I think we can really look at colleges and other institutions who have been doing this for assistance. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a group, the Sloan C Consortium, and they provide conferences and seminars and things like that on distance learning. And it's been really helpful too. Any other questions?
Okay.
Well, you are free to go enjoy this beautiful day, and Chad and I are available for questions afterwards if you want to come up. I guess we're still being taped,
turn the mic off.
though, so you can. Thank you. I could take it off though, and then that would be harder to. Oh yeah, I'll get out of the way while I'm doing it.
So, therefore, all my meetings are not recorded. But that would be, I'll do that. Yeah, the topic of the connect is like, so when I'm doing meetings,
website.
I don't know about we're changing our first. Yeah, we're gonna do webinars for the high school.
I finally added it.
But go with it. That's pretty cool. I've been.
But we still do like an overview. So they give, like 5 or 6 actually for the live streams and we do
So if you're all right, that's kind of
That's what he's doing.
yeah.
they're rounds.
Tell them what to do. That's the problem.
I don't know where the P is either.
Whenever I hear an acronym, I'm like, oh, no.
So, in the past,
Of the.
we've heard large, well,
Well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, even for in person, no one has a good answer.
Well, that's the one I
So I'm curious to know.
I bought my
How you
house.
decided to answer that. They just say about something.
Yeah, well, we'll see, and I think actually RAP is going to be more, because for the research part, we're going to be creating materials with.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Like, would you do them?
Yeah.
Or at least we try.
I'm a librarian, that's what I do.
All
But I
right,
think we're gonna
so,
have
I'm sorry, what was my name?
and then they have,
Let's see, is there a break?
like I said, in the past, they have not graded, they're gonna be graded starting next year, and we might grade them. If we don't grade them, we're gonna provide the rubrics for the adjuncts area.
At least you have a learning management system supporting.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the reasons, because Blackboard can do it, but Lexis Blackboard can't, because
Right, 20
there's
do it all.
yeah.
Yeah. I just couldn't like. So, okay, cool, good luck.
Thank you.
Could be.
Maybe.
So different school.
Ellen is at the U of M.
Oh, sure.
You got all your stuff? Okay.
I remember when somebody was trying to hire you away. And he wouldn't come. No, call me again. We're trying to get Phil back. That's right. That's where he goes. Well, he's not coming back into this mess, I can tell you that. There's too many things that have not changed. They've had a few changes for the staff and very few changes for the kids.